Welcome to Powerhouse. Joining us today, we have Megan Lam, the founder of Neurum Health. Hi,
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
thanks for joining. Maybe first start off with a brief introduction to your company.
Sure. So Niram is a B2B digital behavioral health company. Essentially, what we do is we go into organizations and we do mental health screening. But what's really special about us is that we have a machine learning method which ensures that each individual gets personalized support. So essentially, Joyce, your mental health support, program sort of looks a little bit different from mine, because everyone's life story is unique and everyone's life doesn't work 9 to 5 like a job does. So we wanted to make sure that whatever we provided fitted people's story in the way that they're unique. So yeah, that's a
Well,
Niram in a nutshell.
that is very interesting. How did you get into that in terms of both the wellness and also the technology aspect of it?
Oh, with a lot of wonderful things in life by complete accident. Um, especially the tech part, because I'm definitely someone that resorts to turning things on and off
Mhm.
when they don't work.
Right.
Not a big techie person at all, but so I guess starting out from the health and wellness aspect of it, because that came first. So once upon a time, in an alternate universe, I'd probably be a lawyer. Um, I studied hard, got into some law schools, but unfortunately, due to some family tragedies, my grandmother passed away due to suicide. I decided I'm going to drop this law thing, and just take a risk and pick a topic, um, and just basically figure out why no one saw this coming. Um, because she was the happiest person I've ever met. She was my absolute best friend. She was such a big animal lover, really lived larger than life. And no one really saw this coming. No one really understood what depression was or what that looked like, until of course, it was too late to do anything about it. So I really switched gears early on and picked a thing that no one knew anything about at that point. Our school didn't offer psychology as a subject. They didn't, sort of didn't really believe that it was a science. Um, yeah, and I felt like my sort of early academic career was really focused on just figuring out how do we prevent this from happening? How do I make sure everyone else's family is healthy and we can look out for them?
Mhm.
So I switched gears and went into neuroscience, and psychopathology, which is just a fancy name of saying how does the brain develop and what could potentially go wrong.
Right.
Um, it's really long. It never fits on any forms if I try to write if I write the full program name on. Um, and then I realized, I was like staring at brains all day and looking at all these papers, um, and I'm watching people walk in and out of the like clinics, for example, where a research lab was situated, and I was like, oh my gosh, is there a way that we can understand health and wellness outside of these
Mhm.
walls of these
Studies.
like clinical things? Exactly, right? Because like health happens outside.
Right.
um, so that's when I sort of shifted a spotlight to tech,
Mhm.
because at that point it was just starting to get hotter as a topic, and we were starting to see all sorts of different fields, and it wasn't just in medicine. It was in everything else, with design and technology and sorts of other subjects really just colliding and collaborating with each other. And so it was just such a perfect time to work with some other groups that were working on interesting things. But in typical academia, people weren't just really talking to each other. Sort of like a slow pivot into technology.
Mhm.
I think inherently I was always interested in how do we make sure people get, the best support for them? How do we, reach people? How do we, provide better access to care and support? and how do we make sure like that's affordable? So that's always like, and making sure that's scalable so we can reach as many people as possible. So those were, I guess I never really had a concrete, like, yes, mental health tech.
Right.
That's my hardcore path I'm going down. I mean, it definitely didn't exist like 10 years ago. But I guess there were just these like core ingredients that you have that you're like, yeah, this feels right. And you sort of put these ingredients in a pot and just see where it takes you. And I guess I guess that's my accidental journey into mental health tech.
Right. Did you take certain positions or work at certain companies that kind of progressed to that, either in the wellness or in the tech industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So so my background is primarily in research. So right before building Niram, I was at Yale School of Medicine. Um, I was doing a research fellowship there at a maternal outpatient center. So it was wonderful because you got this rare opportunity to actually see the people you're building for. And we built a smartphone app to help moms, quit smoking and to help with maternal depression. So it was such a rare opportunity to actually interact with the people you're building for on a day-to-day basis. And I guess that was just such a good opportunity that made me realize, goodness gracious, there's a great intersection here between, design, the science and technology. And it's like really created a thing that has never really been created before, but is so valuable and so useful and designed so well that fits into people's lives. And I guess that's what really got me excited.
Right. And when you were looking into the wellness, right, with your family tragedy, I mean, do you feel like there's very little support in terms of organizations out there and tools, or even just within the family? Is it really hard to kind of talk about it? And some of the tools that you come up now, is that kind of to also not just for individual, but helping families cope with the situation, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I people often think that mental health issues is a very silo thing. It sort of just happens to one person and it sort of stays there. But it's often been described as like cancer of the mind, but spreads like the flu. So
Right.
if you have a parent, for example, who is quite ill, that could, of course, like affect their kids as well, especially if their kids have to support their parents or take care of them. I worked and studied in the States and the UK, and worked in Australia before. So all in the mental health space with gradual sort of moves into the mental health tech arena. But there was something I fundamentally realized was whenever I talked about, mental health in English, I just couldn't envision me saying the same thing in Chinese to my parents. We just have a different way of expressing our care. Um, and like, for example, we'd ask like bao like, have you eaten yet? It's nothing to do with the food, like whatsoever. Like, have you eaten yet? Are you okay? Like, just
Right.
trying to look out for
Like, how
someone.
are you? Yeah.
Or question about resources or NGOs out there. And I think there definitely are. In Hong Kong, we have Joyful Mental Health Foundation that's been around, I think, like 5 years now. There's like Mind Hong Kong, for example, and I feel like they all do really great work in terms of raising awareness. They try their best to, pull together a lot of like resources, like informational resources, create knowledge repositories. I guess the thing is, if you weren't already inclined to go look for these resources, you wouldn't find them. Like, there isn't a proactive reach out to people. So for example, like I'm trying to envision my grandmother, and in her state was the first thing in her mind. Well, I'm going to, first of all, she wouldn't understand how to go online.
Right.
So that's already like one barrier in front of her. So I guess the question is, even though you have a bunch of resources, how do you reduce the barriers for people to access that? And that's really a design question.
And do you feel like culturally because you mentioned language as well, and culturally also that is also a tough thing,
Yeah.
I guess, to break through, right? And so do you see that quite a bit in Hong Kong as well?
I feel like hard is a very relative term. I think we
Mm,
just talk about it in a different way.
okay. Yeah.
So for example, abroad, it's so common for someone to just drop in a conversation that, oh, like I went and saw my therapist today.
Yeah.
I've never
And it's
heard
like,
any.
okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, like I picked up some onions and then like went and saw my therapist. It's like a totally normal. It's like a completely normal thing.
Uh,
But over here, when or someone might tell you that they're not feeling great. They're very open and they're very proactive about it.
mm,
Whereas growing up here, I feel like we do talk about it just in a slightly different manner. So, for example, it's we don't put so much of an emphasis on feelings. We might say, "Oh, I didn't sleep well." Your
mm,
everyday life has been, your day-to-day things might have been disrupted a bit. Oh, I find it so difficult to get out of bed. I have such low energy. I have, I wasn't able to do something that I was able to do before.
right.
So it's more like a behavioral thing. There are changes in their everyday behaviors than
Mm,
a feelings
right.
way of communicating mental health. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah,
It's not as direct, so it's a bit of a
yeah.
hint.
Headaches is another good one. It's more of a physical representation, or they talk about mental health just in a different way. So it's really important, whatever you do, to just like localize, and just understand how people already talk about it,
Mhm.
and sort of go from there.
Right, right. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it's like read between the lines. You have to notice those
Oh
things, right?
yeah.
Cool. And well, as you set up your company, what are some of the biggest challenges?
Like when you run your own company, it always feels like a million and one fires are going off at once.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to pick. Oh, I wouldn't call it a hard thing, but it's always not a very nice thing when people say no to you. But you
Mm,
sort of get used to it as you go along, and you start realizing that behind the no, there's always like really good feedback, or like there's a no, but there's like this other way, or no.
right,
It's never really like a hard no. It's
right.
always just an opportunity to try something else, or to try a different path, knock on another door or a different door. I
Was it
think
really
maybe
hard
that's
to set up Neurum Health? I mean, along that path, like your company is you work with other companies to set up
yeah.
programs. So is it very hard initially to have the conversations with these corporations to set up a wellness program, or do you feel like there's a lot of companies that's very receptive to that?
Yeah, I actually feel like the conversations, people have been very receptive. Um, I know that there's sort of view that, oh, there's like a lot of stigma and taboo, and yes there is. But at the end of the day, when I sort of like talk to customers, they're people at the end of the day. They are empathetic, they are
Mm,
people, um, and they want to make sure that what they introduce to their business also makes business sense. So just really making sure it's sometimes you have to take your, like, whatever you're trained in, like my mental health cap off, and try to put my like customer cap on, and see like how you might have all these like super esoteric knowledge about mental health, but it might be the other person's first time common language that you both share, and that language is really just empathy and humanity. Like,
right.
everyone wants to do well for the people in their company, and they really care about their employees, so they're having this conversation in the first place, and from that middle ground, then we can slowly work towards um, actually building like the more detailed bits of like, oh, building a mental health program and introducing things into their company.
Mhm. Did it take long to build up that aspect first versus the, I guess, technical aspect of the program?
I feel like it also depends on company culture,
Mm,
because I always say, like, even if we do have a great tech solution that looks out for your people 24/7 on demand, personalized to each individual. But if you don't have the company culture to really support that. So for example, if you're a company that people don't come first, like the people who work for you don't really come first, and you suddenly introduced like, okay, Neurum Health, go use this thing, it just wouldn't be as receptive. We really just see ourselves as the seed and the company as the soil. They both really have to go hand in hand for something fruitful to come out of it. So I think oftentimes that the harder bit would really be around like the company culture and making sure that they're there. We're very fortunate that there are a lot of great companies out there that are very people first.
Right, that's great. And of course, with COVID-19, the past few months, and also with a lot of kind of the social activities around Hong Kong last year, do you see a lot more activity or conversations, either with individuals or company about mental wellness?
Absolutely. From an individual perspective, what we've, at least from the data insights on our platform, for example, and our user research, just to give the listeners a sneak peek, a lot of them were people who had never really done anything mental health related whatsoever, like never meditated, never, don't really understand what mindfulness is. They were just like curious. And I feel like even if it's, not in a very overt manner, people are more interested in how to take care of themselves and their family, taking care of their mind, and really thinking about the benefits of what mental health and wellness could prefer. So they would sort of hop on our platform not really knowing what to expect. They just want to learn something new. Yeah, like find out more. It's the curiosity factor. And I think that's something that recent events, current affairs, have also really catalyzed. I mean, mental health and wellness has always been there. Like when people say, oh, like, yeah, it's like like all these issues have started popping up. It's like, no, these have always been there. They've just sort of been catalyzed and heated up a bit more, given the global pandemic and given the social unrest.
You see companies like coming up with different programs and structure with Neurum Health, just to answer some of the maybe additional questions from their staff?
I think companies are increasingly in trying to know what their employees' unique needs are, because at the moment everything is very one size fits all. So it doesn't matter if you have you're not doing very well and you're on the more severe end of the spectrum. What they offer might be yoga class, which might not be a good fit for some employees. So I think there's also an open-mindedness about being more data-driven as well. Letting almost like data is a way for employees to sort of voice out what works for them, and what their needs are. And we're able to do that in completely anonymous and confidential manner, so it's completely safe. We'll never know it's like Joey from IT,
Right.
who put in this piece of feedback, or this is Joey's data. So I think we're really sort of like moving towards that now, instead of people just sort of top down guessing or trying to figure out like what works best for the human capital of their company. People are also, at least companies are a little more open in terms of, okay, like let's have a look at the data and see what's really going to fit our workforce and what the needs are. So I think that's definitely a trend.
Do you feel like the current situation with a lot of people, working from home, and do you feel like it accelerated a lot of the programs as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that companies that are very people first and think about flexible work, remote work, health and wellness, even before all of this happened, have at least the ones I've seen have fared better and have, thrived relatively well, despite the current situation.
What are some of the things that you do to kind of relax and unwind?
I have to have my little cup of tea. And if I have to be really honest with you, I used to be one of those people who wouldn't really do, like, I'd almost be a bit of a hypocrite. Like, I wouldn't really do all the things I know were good for my mental health. I was definitely still very Hong Kong style, pushing, like, even in academia, just like burning the midnight oil, pushing really hard, taking on more than my plate can handle. And ironically, people say that when you start your own company, it's like it's really rough. It's going to be that, but more. But the beauty is that I have colleagues from different backgrounds, like a clinical psychologist, a machine learning engineer, my co-founder who's a full stack developer, and each and every single one of them have really taught me something that has been beneficial to my mental health, especially the clinical psychologist, Christine. So she does all of the content on our platform, and I honestly have used the platform for my own personal benefit as well. So I have my cup of tea, and then I get Clara, which is our platform, to recommend me an exercise. So it could be like a 30-second, super short, not super high commitment, like breathing exercise. I will admit I used to be one of those people that would roll my eyes and be like, I know how to breathe. Like, you don't need to teach me how to breathe. I know how to breathe. Like, the content she has sort of recommended on the platform has really helped me. I didn't realize there were so many different types of breathing. And I did notice that has helped my anxiety a lot. I could actually see on the platform my anxiety levels for that week being a little more controlled, just because just because I've been pretty good with my breathing exercises. So
That's good.
You're not gonna justify a good breathing exercise. Yeah.
Don't laugh at the breathing exercise. Yeah. But it's true. Yeah. I mean, definitely, personally, I've been trying to be more aware as well, right? Like just some of the quick exercises, as you said, like just, the schedule is always packed. I always try to overpack it. And so I'm just trying to find short things to do, whether it's like a quick yoga thing or a quick, exercise, something that's just bite size. Yeah.
And sometimes, things take time. I'm not someone who believes in like a quick fix. There are some things like a breathing exercise that if you nervous before public speaking, which is a very common fear, a quick breathing exercise might be helpful. But there are certain things like, some people might have relationship issues, like different communication styles between different generations, or parenting, like postpartum, for example, or parenting stress. Right. These are also it's important to understand the context as well. So this is a bit of a funny story. I got my partner to also try Clara, our app, maybe a little passive aggressively. We actually would do exercises together, like relationship-based exercises together to improve the quality of our relationship, which has been quite helpful. Yeah,
that's good. So that's all on the app.
Yeah, that's all on the app. Yeah.
Oh,
so wow. That's what I mean by everyone's story is very unique. So if you just gave birth, or you just had an argument with your partner, everyone's story is quite different. So the support you need can be tailored to that level.
Well, what is the next big step for your company?
At the moment, we are B2B. But during COVID-19, we realized that, Hong Kong is already quite resource barren when it comes to mental health support. We don't have, I think the ratio is actually quite poor when it comes to like having one clinician to the actual population that they can handle, like in terms of client side. So we thought, okay, and even if you wanted to go see your your clinician, it'd be quite difficult because, you know, everyone's self-quarantining.
Mhm.
So during COVID-19, we decided that we were going to do a public version, so like a B2C version, and just offer it up, because so we took all the sort of enterprise features and created this like a simpler, public friendly Clara, and we shared that, and we've gotten some very good responses, and a lot of requests from schools, which I can imagine.
Right.
You know, everyone's life is so shaken at the moment, and the structure of how we sort of organize our everyday life, like going to work or going to school, has been quite disrupted. So I can, yeah, so I can definitely imagine that. We definitely are looking into more of a public version, because we do see the value that it has provided. I always like the stories where people tell me that they use the exercises, or they, you know, do it in sort of like a family style setting, which I wasn't anticipating. Someone told me they actually requested if they could get their family members on, and were quite relieved that we did this sort of COVID-19 like public version. So they've been like trying it out like as a family unit. Yeah, and very, you know, Chinese family doesn't speak
Right.
English.
Right.
They so I was like, oh, maybe we, you know, maybe we just, you know, tend to do things just a different way, in a very like unit, you know,
Mm. Right.
like style. I'm sure there are some parts where, you know, they want to keep for themselves, like if they want to journal something, or
Right.
um, have more private thoughts. But I was like thoroughly surprised that it was, you know, it was more of a family style thing. So that was one thing we didn't quite anticipate, um, but really highlights and I guess validates the value for
Mhm.
sort of sharing what we built to a wider audience,
Sure.
or to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. This is the last question. Any advice you have for our listeners in general, or for specifically setting up companies?
Once more, just a mindset one. I've
Mhm.
found it quite helpful to just reflect once in a while and just have things that are very core to you. So whatever you do going forward, there's a level of integrity. So even if it's not like exactly the job description that you want, there are elements in whatever you're doing in your day-to-day life that you really resonate with. Um, a lot of the times people aren't happy, or even myself back then when I was doing research, I was like, I can't understand why I feel like something's missing,
Mm.
because I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. You know, I'm doing, you know, mental health research. I can help lots of people potentially one day. And but there was just this like, there was just this element that was missing there. And so like I sort of went away and just reflected and realized that that sort of hole could be filled up by what tech preferred, which was,
Mm.
oh, helping people right here and now, anytime, anywhere, um, as opposed to, you know, being in a research lab where it could take years and years and years for something to happen. So yeah, I guess that's the first one. Just really reflect, have just core things to you. So whatever you do, there's a level of integrity. Um, in terms of setting up a company, especially if you're a female founder,
Mm.
do it. Do it.
Just do it,
I
right?
just do it. I often get a lot of like cold LinkedIn emails of, you know, female founders that, you know, are maybe similar age, or you know, they're just like thinking about it, but they have a lot of hesitations.
Mhm.
And they're not like, you know, other responsibilities or anything. It's like an actual mind block, um, of actually believing that they can do something. And I always say that it's okay, because you don't have to know how to do everything day one.
Mhm.
If it doesn't scare you, you probably, you're not doing something right. Um, so definitely take that leap. The learning curve is definitely going to be steep, but I feel like there's no better way of learning than by doing. So if you're thinking about it, do it. Just give it a try.
Just do it. Yeah. Awesome.
Just do it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's awesome advice. And thanks for talking to us.